much ready. Jai, should we be asking for permission to just to record this, or I mean, is that, you know, implicit?
Well, if people would prefer that their names and faces not shown, they can turn off their camera and they can change their name to anonymous. Other than the speakers, I think the speakers do have the understanding that we'll be recording it. And after the whole event's done, because we have 10 events this week, ISP will go through the recording, clean it up, and then upload everything to our YouTube channel. So if you prefer your name or face is not shown, we want to respect that. But just make sure that you change your name. But other than that, I think we're pretty good. Thank you for being here. We're excited.
Okay, so we'll get started momentarily. So if I don't like to be on this, my photo to appear, then I can just turn myself off. Is that
You
what
can even put a tie on, so come on.
Okay. Okay, so let's get started. It is 3 minutes past 2 o'clock, and we will try to finish by 3:15. And so we will get started, okay? It is recorded, so if you do not like to have your photo or face or your name appearing in the recorded version, you could change your name and you could turn your webcam off as well. Okay, welcome to the second session of today, the International Forum on Youth 2020. We had a great session this morning. I hope you were able to make it, but if you missed it, we had a great a session by a documentary photographer, Haruka Sakaguchi from New York City, and it was very moving, I think, and I really appreciate that. My name is Sab Matsumoto. I teach mathematics here at College of the Canyons, and I'm a faculty co-coordinator together with Dr. Brent Riffle of our history department, who is also on the Zoom recording right now. And it is great to have you here. Whether you are on the panel or you are in the audience, you will get to participate through questions and answers. We're great to have you, whether you're watching this on Zoom or on Facebook Live. And I am told Facebook Live, you can look up College of the Canyons, ISP, or International Services and Programs. It is a great honor to have the student panel and discussion as part of our international forum. Last year, we had a great success with the student forum. I think students were eager to hear from other students and to hear other perspectives, especially in the society like the one we live in today. The vision of the forum is to raise global awareness, global profile, to further timely and discussion, to further timely and scholarly dialogue on international matters, and to create opportunities where our students not only learn from scholars and experts across the globe, but also to have the opportunity to voice their vision to the betterment of the world. And we can certainly hope for a better world, unless we live in the perfect world, which we do not at the point. All you have to do is to turn the TV on and watch the news. Okay, so we will have a brief discussion, introduction first, followed by about 15 minutes of panel discussion, in which I will be asking each panelist, each of the 6 panelists, 5 questions. And then we will hopefully have a good and direct and robust time of questions and answers. And the audience is, is able to participate by asking questions. And by the way, if you have any questions during the panel discussion or after the discussion, you can put your questions in the chat box, and someone will be, I think Brent will be reviewing and looking at these. And at the end of the the program, of course, you will be able to ask questions by unmuting yourself, provided that we have enough time. And then at the very end, we'll take a quick poll before we end this session. All right, so I will let the 6 students introduce themselves. And so I'll go with in the alphabetical order of their last name. And so first I have Isabel. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Isabella. I am actually a dual citizen. So I grew up in Canada, but I was born in America. So I've lived here for about 5.5 years. I moved here in 2015, originally to pursue the arts and dance. I was a ballerina for 15 years. And in 2018, I was in a really bad car accident and broke my spine. So after that, I spent a little bit of time trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And now I am at COC as a student pursuing a psychology degree so I can become a therapist.
Oh, good. Thank you, Isabella. And then we have, let's see who is next. Kevin K. Kevin K.
Okay, I'm here.
Hey, Kevin, how about you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about where you're from, what you're studying.
Okay, my name is Kevin and I come from China. I have been in America about 10 months, I think. And I am learning math and English as second language AT. And currently in 150, I think. Okay, nice to meet you.
Thank you, Kevin. All right. And then next we have Susan Lin.
Hi, my name is Susan, and I was born and raised in Taiwan. This is my almost third years in College of the Kenyans. And fun facts about me is I'm bilingual. I speak Mandarin and English, and now I'm learning Spanish on my way being a trilingual.
Good. Thank you, Susan. Winnie Lim. Winnie Lim.
Hi, my name is Winnie Lin, and I'm an international student from Taiwan, and this is my second, almost third year in the US, and I'm glad to be invited to this event to share my experience here. And my major is psychology because my goal is to become a psychologist. And I'm planning to transfer to another school next year, and I'm looking forward to explore more challenges and possibilities here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And how about Jace Trinidad next?
Hello, my name is Jace Trinidad. I am currently a sociology student at UC Riverside. I am a COC alum where I also studied sociology. I am planning to go on and get my doctorate in sociology as well, and someday return to COC. Thank you all.
Wow, we can't wait to have you back here. Okay, and then we have a special guest joining us from Sydney. And so Yinghua, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm Yinghua. I'm an international student coming from mainland China. So this is my final year of PhD. I'm doing migration studies in Australia. And my research is about Chinese professional women coming from mainland China, mainly the cohort of one child generation. So the age would be between 26 to 39. And yeah, I think I have been in Australia for about 5 years and looking forward to sharing with everyone about my experience as well. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So these are our wonderful 6 panelists. And let me go ahead and ask the first question. And I guess, if time allows, I'd like to ask each one of you all the questions, but we'll see how things go. And I may at some point ask whoever wants to answer the question. But maybe for the first one, we can all answer the question. And we'll go in that order that we have just, used. So Isabella goes first. So Isabella, what do you think of when you hear the word global or globalization?
So the first thing I think of when I hear global is food. I think of how, as different cultures, we present so much through our food, and it's such a social atmosphere. Globalization, to me, honestly, is the availability of diversity that's become so much closer than it ever was through the use of technology and the internet and social media. I think it's really beautiful how all these different perspectives can come together now, that we can try these different recipes, that we can experience other cultures that are so different from our own. And I think a possible detriment to patriotism is that the assumption that our culture, wherever you're from, is better than other cultures. And I think there's something really beautiful about globalization in that we get to experience these other perspectives and learn that every culture is beautiful in a different way, and that we are all equal in that.
Okay, good. Thank you. I appreciate that. Kevin, what do you think of when you hear the word global or globalization?
When I hear global, I always think the global warming, the greenhouse, I think. It's a kind of pollution of the global environment. I think you are muted.
Oh, okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay, good.
And it's a very popular topic during the study, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it is a word that is heard a lot more now. Okay. Okay, how about Susan? The same question. What do you think of when you hear the word global or globalization?
When I hear the word global or globalization, I tend to think about like it's how you experience the world and how you see the world and how you're going to see in different culture and different races and different people's perspective. Just like the fact like I'm studying abroad, it's like a study of expanding my globalization. Let me realize like what's going on outside of my own country and what is happening and how is people thinking. That's what I think of.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think I have the right list here. So next, Wei Ni, what do you think of when you hear the word global or globalization?
When I hear about the global, I may think about the thing is very broad or wide, and like they have like a connection to the whole world. And for the globalization, made me think about you want to like promote or expand the thing to the world. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right, Jace, how about you? Global or globalization?
As a scholar interested in race and ethnicity, I think that the current state of our world, where we have immediate access to folks on the other side of the like world, is amazing, but also kind of, I guess I would say with a note of like I'm a little bit terrified, because I think that as it had been previously mentioned, there's this sense that, I think especially in America, that our culture, our society is better or has some sort of ranking on another, when in reality, it's kind of, I would say, I guess, assumptive to believe that like we have something over another country, another even region of the world. As a child of immigrants, migration is something that also came immediately to mind. Just as we can see, even the attendees here have come from all over the world, can trace, their families back. And it just is a very large topic that I think evokes a lot of emotion. I really, really like what Isabella said about food and like the ability of food to bring folks together. I've come to realize that food is something that most people are happy to talk about. And my question for folks when I meet them is often, how did you grow up eating rice? Because it's such a staple food in so many cultures, and folks go on and on about it. And I think it's interesting.
Wow, we can have an entire discussion on that question, I think. That's good. Thank you. Yinghua, what do you think of when you think of the word global or globalization?
I think for me, I would talk a little bit about my own research as well, if that's not too boring for everyone. I think globalization is a process of interactions and integration among people, companies, and also among governments as well internationally. And also because I'm looking at human mobility as an exchange of, human capital, social capital, cultural capital, because of the transnational movements of migrants. So prior this global pandemic, globalization, for me, I think it's not for me. Scholarly, is kind of being escalated since the 18th century because of the development in transportation and communication technology. So this kind of increase in global interactions and also promote this kind of growth in international trade, and also exchange of ideas and culture, like the panelists just discovered. So there is a huge exchange in terms of food, cultural values, social norms, these kind of things. And America, Australia, and Canada are among the popular destination countries for Chinese migrants. So there is kind of, how do I say, integration of culture over there, and also remaining Chineseness, in this kind of globalized process. I think currently the economic exchange is still the trending process. Transnational mobility, in particular after this pandemic situation, I think it becomes more evident because countries close their borders in different time frames. So that's just the overall general trend. And also I'm interested in the temporal dimension of globalization. So because technology and international trade, they are kind of increasing, but they didn't stop because of this pandemic. Virtual kind of communication actually draw people closer across space and time, like what we are doing today. So yeah, that's for me. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. There's a wealth of information there. And I'm glad that you are part of this discussion here with us. Okay, so let's say number 2. By the way, if you are participating by Zoom, you can feel free to just put your questions on the chat box. And if we have time, I think we would be able to address your questions after each of these questions. All right, but let's go on to the second question, and I'm going to go back to Isabella for this question number 2. What do you think is an urgent, pressing issue facing today's youth? And I guess, in this question, you don't have to restrict to the American youth, since this is an international forum. Basically think of a youth of America or youth of, where you live, or, internationally in general. You can take this question in any way you interpret it.
So honestly, I think there are quite a few issues that face today's youth. But personally, I think one of the most pressing in my mind is that we are stressed and we are lonely. I think that there is, the world we're growing up in is incredibly stressful. We're dealing with the impact of climate change. We're dealing with an increasing cost of living in every capacity without an increase in wage. We're also, in America specifically, we're experiencing a divide of ideals that is becoming incredibly hostile. And I think that as youth growing up in this situation, trying to, and this I think applies to Canada as well as America, although I can't speak to anywhere else. But I think that because we need to do so much preparation in order to prepare for this world that we're walking into, that we're not necessarily able to spend as much time creating connections with our peers. I think that there's a huge problem with blaming social media for this. We escape into social media and we blame that for why we can't make connections or why we're lonely, or that's a huge problem with how we perceive Generation Z. But I honestly think that we escape into social media to try and recreate those connections that we just aren't able to do in person because we have so much to do in order to prepare to be grown-ups. I think as teenagers, we're growing up so much faster because, and I think that's seriously impacting our level of intimacy that we can create with other people, which I mean directly impacts our development as human beings and as adults into the world later on. So honestly, I think a lot of symptoms of loneliness, our anxiety, our depression, our suicide, these rates are all rising in kids. And I think a huge part of that is the sense of loneliness that we have, because it's more important for us to ensure our own survival than to increase our connections.
Okay, thank you. I mean, that's great to hear, you know, the honest voices of our students. That's very very touching, actually. Appreciate that. Okay, Kevin, what do you think are some of the urgent pressing issues facing today's youth?
In my opinion, the biggest issue facing young today is employment. And we start to think about our majors and jobs in the future from the moment we go to the college. And most of our time in the future will spend on finding a good job or keeping it. And it's very important. I think it makes a lot of youngs feel stressful. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All. Yeah, good. Yes, that's a very real, urgent question, I'm sure. Okay, so let's go to Susan. Susan Lin, what do you think are some of the pressing issues facing today's youth?
I think one thing that I'm concerned about when it comes to the pressing issue for today's youth is the social media. I agree what Isabella said about like how we escape into social media world, but at the same time, I feel like a lot of the youth, a lot of people in generation nowadays tends to being trapped in the social media. Like they're living in a stereotype what social media created. People are growing into, for example, materialism or into like all this violence video on social media, and they tend to think that it is fine with it, and it tends to being mislead into like, oh, I have to be like this in order to be happy. Like they feel lonely and they feel depressed because they saw all these people being connected with everyone else on social media, but little did they know, like maybe what they see might not be the truth. Maybe what they see, it's more like a fantasy. It's not just for them, but for everyone else in the world. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, my family was talking about that just the other day. You know, you see somebody all smiling in Facebook, and you know, who knows? I mean, that's just a one aspect of their life. Yeah, thank you for that. So Winnie, same question. Let's see, where are my questions here? Yeah, what do you think is an urgent pressing issue facing today's youth?
I think the world is developing too fast and become like too complicated, and like too many like new stuff come up, like either good or bad, and they have like generate like many problems, like the cyberbullying like on the social media, or the drug problem like the cybercrime, like so many like, and so many stuff come out and we are forced to like exposed to it. And maybe like teenager in like this age, they may like influenced by the thing on the online stuff, and they will lose their way. Yeah. So I think it is the urgent issue like teenager life face today. Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, some of these are really, really serious issues. I think you mentioned cyberbullying and so on. Something that we never had to, encounter when we were children. We had real bullying, but not cyberbullying. Okay. Anyway, all right. So, Jace, what do you think are some of the pressing issues of youth today?
I think something that's really pressing for youth today is this paradox of today's youth being seen as uh, like uh, like focused on social media or focused on themselves or seen as really individualistic and kind of detached from one another, right? That they're posed as this, and sometimes the youth do act in this way, but I think on the whole, it is not caused by the youth, but rather as a response to the world that we're living in right now, created by by institutions, whether that be culture, government, like family, education, and it's just a response rather than us posing ourselves as, yes, we are self-interested, yes, we only want to look out for ourselves, like the belief that we are just depressed, like wrapped up in our phones, wrapped up in the computer, wrapped up in X, Y, or Z, when in reality, when you speak to today's youth, and I'm sure plenty of professionals in this room can speak to it, today's youth are increasingly interested in like the welfare of others, of the community, of the entire world, right? But when we are minimized and seen as, like that we're not interested, that we're not engaged, that story that we are, right, that is sold, that is told, kind of pushes the youth back. And I think that once we realize, okay, the welfare of others, like I'm not the only one who cares about how somebody else is doing, I think that's a turning point that once we hit it, it's going to be pretty great.
Okay, good. Yeah, thanks. The word marginalized is the word that comes to my mind when I hear a response like that. Yeah, okay, good. Thank you. Yinghua, what do you think are some of the pressing issues faced by young people today?
I think what everybody just raised was really good, like from the perspective of being the young people over here, talking about the issues they have been experienced, the well-being, the how to build meaningful relationship in real world, except just connecting through social media, and also the increasing cost of living expenses, like even studies become so expensive, and also violence, especially like online. And I think there's a strong sense of precarity over here. For me, I think I would like to say that youth is kind of understand in different contexts as well. So for me, I personally experienced this kind of contextualized understanding when I was in China. So we are able to celebrate a National Youth Day. It's May 4th, and have half a day off because if it's a working day. And then I turned 26, so I no longer eligible to take that leave because 26 isn't qualified as young people anymore. So, but in my parents' perspective, I was still young because I wasn't married. But until October that year, I got married. So they suddenly feel that I become an adult. So the concept of youth change in that kind of understanding. But when I come to Australia, I did my master's degree over here, and I was about 28, and I had my daughter that year too. So, but when I show up in my class with my daughter, and people concerned about my age, they said, "You are too young to have a child." So I suddenly feel like I'm young again. So this idea of youth is just keep changing, and in different kind of context, and also is related to culture, identity, and ethnicity. So I think it's really hard to say like what are the gender issues for, maybe more pressing for young people. And also what I sense in this kind of discussion is that there is a misunderstanding or misinterpretation who are the young people who can claim as youth. And some people, like in my class, who is, I think she's about 56, but she said she's young in heart, so she can be a youth as well. So but over here, probably that's just a boring discussion about who can claim as young people. I think overall, there are other concerns for, not necessarily for young people, like environment issues, overpopulation, and in an aging society. Those are the pressing issue as well. So they're just not as, probably as more expressed among young people nowadays, but those are the hidden ones, quite pressing as well. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, that was actually the last few things you mentioned were kind of interesting too, because in many other cultures, maybe not in the United States, but I hear people talking about, being worried about what happens when they age. Maybe they're young now, teenagers, but by the time they become old and then when they need help as an older person, what would the world be like, and so on. The environmental issue, the climate change, population growth. Yeah, these are some of the long-term issues I think we need to be thinking about as well. Okay, so at this point, we have finished the 2 rounds, and I can keep going. I'm wondering if I should pause and ask for questions, or should we just continue to go on? I guess, I don't see a lot of questions here, so maybe I should just go on to the next question. And then, as we discuss various different topics, you can think of questions that you may want to discuss at the end of our session today. Okay, so let's go to number 3. In your opinion, what are some of the things that define youth culture today? And I think some of the things you may have already mentioned, but what defines youth culture today? Let's go back to the beginning of the list. Isabella, what do you think defines our youth culture today?
I want to call youth culture today a casual rebellion. I think we live our life in comfier clothes. Sweatshirts and leggings are a standard way of wearing. We spend a lot of our time devouring media, whether that's pictures or TV or books or articles or anything that we're reading. I think that leads to a sense of intelligence and growth, but it's all done from a more casual enjoyment perspective. But I want to call it a rebellion because I feel like we have this ability to share our opinions in such a more confident way. I think Jace was the one who said that we've really developed a sense of being able to share or being more woke, essentially, right? Like we're more able to discuss problems with the world that we see that we don't necessarily want to go into. And I think that there's something really beautiful in how we rebel in a different way, because every youth rebels in every generation, but we have the ability to do it on such a public scale that our words actually mean something and actually actively change things in the world that we live in, rather than just being seen as a form of rebellion. So I think we're casual in how we are and how we dress and how we present ourselves, but we rebel in a very public way.
Some of the older folks are smiling at this this comment because and I can see that. Yeah, I see, like when I was young in Japan, having long hair was a sign of rebellion, you know, and that was a bad thing to do. Like, you know, what is this kid doing? Okay, all right. Next, let's go to Kevin. Kevin, what do you think defines our youth culture today?
I think youth culture today is diverse and open and active. I think the fashionable clothes and online social interaction can represent the youth culture today.
So was it what, diverse, open, and active? Was that
Yeah.
what you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Susan Lin, what do you think defines our youth culture today?
What I think defines the youth culture today is, I'm not trying to sound like rude, but I kind of feel like the generation nowadays, like the bravery is really important, because you need to have the ability to accept the new ideas that's popping out every single day. And you need to have the ability to keep on to the technology that's improving nowadays as well. And at the same time, you also need to willing to absorb all this new information coming out like throughout all of the world with the advance of the technology. And also, like, you have to be active, you have to be brave about speaking your own thoughts, and now not afraid to like telling people like what's actually happening, and like speaking up like what's in your mind. And that's what I think that represents the youth today.
Okay, good. Yeah, thanks. That's true. The knowledge, information is coming all the time to us, right? Sorry, I'm trying to take notes as well. Maybe I should stop doing this, but it's great. I'd like to write down some of the key words that you're mentioning. And that's such a, we have a powerful list of things that I've written down on youth culture so far. So thank you so much for that. Wei Ni, what do you think defines our youth culture today?
I think the thing that define like youth culture is like we are like more have like our opinion and idea about the society and ourselves, and we are like Susan said, like we are more willing to like absorb the new thing and to change. And I agree with the Isabella say, like we have like more opinion and like more confident to say about it. Yeah. And yeah, I think. And right now, like for youth people, like very like various the social media, like very changing thing. Yeah, I think it's like for define like youth people, like youth culture. Mm.
Okay, good. Yeah, thank you. Great observations, everybody. Jace Trinidad, what do you think defines our youth culture today?
I'd like to start off by saying that I love the fact that everybody prior to me has talked about the fact that folks our age kind of are empowered to speak up and like talk about these like issues, pressing issues for us. And that's not to say, you know, like to be self-centered or to say that people our age are like these like awesome people, because I think every generation might have thought that about themselves and the progress that they made. I think that something that really defines culture, like youth culture today, is immediacy and access to things, to information, to people, to all sorts of things. And I think an important note to make here is while some folks will use this access to, you know, to broaden their horizons, to seek out positive things to move them forward, there are also folks, even our age, right? I'm sure that use this access to maybe not be as understanding, to speak up in their beliefs that are, they're totally entitled to believe what they believe, but also that might be marginalizing someone else. I think something great is that when we enter these spaces, more often than not, we can believe and assume that the folks around us are these progressive, forward-thinking people, but we don't, there's not that guarantee. The face that we put towards the public is not always the same face that we put in our private lives. But I think that we can all speak to the positive sides, the positive of the access that we currently have to each other and to information.
Okay, another great observation. Thank you so much. Wow. Okay. So how about Yinghua? What do you think of what do you think is our youth culture today? What defines our youth?
Yeah, I think everyone just talk about over here are really great. Like Jesper's talking about the rebellion of this generation in more public scales. Kevin talk about diverse, open, and active. And Susan talk about generational kind of bravery, confidence, and courage. I think those are quite good summary of what I have been observed. So for me, I think there are a few more tags over there. So it's transnational. So this youth culture now is more like globalized. Young people are connected all together through either social media or internet or other ways. So there is no sense of borders anymore. And they are innovative, creative. So there's no limitation in terms what kind of information or new technology or new ways of showing how they see the world. So there's no limitation over there. And then also, I think the young generation, especially the ones I see in China nowadays, they are hardworking and resilient. So the younger ones, they are leading the technological kind of changes. For example, AI, machine learning, this kind of thing. And they are open and inclusive. So there's a huge diversity over there. They are willing to learn new kind of information, or they are willing to share as well. So this kind of openness and inclusive, this kind of trending is something I see a lot as well. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. And that was lots of descriptions. I've taken notes and I've seen many key words here. Just on this idea of globalization, I want to mention something. I was always interested in seeing the world. You know how I did that? This goes back in years, but I had a shortwave radio. You know what that is? A radio is this machine where you can hear people, talk. Right? And then I would hear, these the international broadcasts from different parts of the world. And that was a way for me to try to figure out what was happening in the world. And, you send something like information, and then they give you a little postcard, and you get really excited, that this little piece of paper postcard came from the Philippines or the Germany or Washington, D.C. or something. I said, wow, this world is big. There was no internet, but we did what we could to find what was happening. So, and this idea of empowered to speak up, I think it's extremely powerful. I think, I think maybe at times my generation was characterized by words like apathy, indifference. What a difference this is. Okay, so let's go to the fourth question. We have two more questions, and then we can go into a more open discussion. The next one is, maybe simple, maybe very complicated. But the question is, what are pros and cons? What are some pros and cons of social media? So, Isabella, go ahead.
pros. I think there's a lot of creative inspiration to be found on social media. A lot of artists really share their work through it. I think it's a beautiful thing. I think the ability to see what my friends are doing if I don't have time to give them a call around the world, I think that's incredible. You can't discount the emphasis that can have. I also think that there's a benefit to talking more about these issues. I think there's a destigmatization of mental health issues. I think there's an increased focus on self-care. I think there's a prevalence of moral attitudes, which may or usually come from a good place, even if they aren't always presented that way. So I think that that's a lot of benefits is we can learn a lot and feel more comfortable sharing things about ourselves because of what we see other people present. Cons, it can be incredibly addicting. I think it can take over a lot of time if you don't develop some kind of way to control it, because it's so easy to get sucked into these algorithms who show you what you want to see. There's something called doom scrolling, which is basically, especially now, getting stuck in this negative spiral of news where you just keep reading more terrible and terrible stories about the world, and you kind of just get sucked into this negative atmosphere. That's a huge part of social media, especially going through a pandemic and all of these other issues that have happened in the last year or so. That's a big problem. I also want to talk about body image and self-esteem issues. I think with influencers and becoming the new celebrity, I think that there's a huge problem, especially with girls, about seeing the image of women who Photoshop themselves constantly in a way that makes it seem like they're our friends. Because it's different than other media where we see models and we are aware that they're advertisements, that they're presenting something to us. These influencers on social media don't do that. They sell us things without us even half the time noticing that they're selling us something. And so they present themselves in a way that makes them seem perfect. And I think that really increases the body image issues that a lot of girls grow up with. And so that I think is a huge con of social media and the way that people use it for corporate use. Thank you.
Good, thank you so much. Yeah, there are lots of good stuff there too. And by the way, you can at the end you can ask questions. You can basically react to. Some of you are putting your heart icon there. And by the way, I forgot to ask also or talk about this too, but I am aware that different countries have different social media platforms. So you have Instagram and Facebook, that's all over the world. But I happen to know, like in Japan, the thing called Line is fairly common. I think the Korean people often use Kakao Talk, and other countries, I think maybe China has that thing called Weibo or something that's sort of equivalent of Twitter. And so you could also talk about these things as well, that because I'm not familiar with all of those things. But anyway, Kevin, same question. What are some pros and cons of social media?
In my opinion, the pros of social media are that people can make friends remotely, and they can share the interesting things about themselves, especially during the COVID-19. It's very effective way for people to relax themselves and communicate with the outside world. And the cons of social media is that it will make people spend a lot of time to watch some meaningless things, I think, and then the social media may spread some negative or false news to other people. Thank you.
Okay, good. Susan, then, same question, pros and cons of social media?
I think the pros of social media is obviously like you can connect it with your friend like in a snap, and you can like know what's going on throughout the world, and like getting the first-hand information just because of how advanced the technology is. And at the same time, it is a great platform to promote any business or to hire the influencer and to talk about their product. It's like a really fast way to like promote something or advertising for something in the cheapest way. But at the same time, like, you know, nothing is perfect. Like I said, like I mentioned in the second question, it's like knowing what everyone else is doing, like also connected to the problem, like Isabella mentioned, like self-esteem, that may like lower your self-esteem or makes you have less confidence, make you feel like you're lonely or you're isolated to everyone else. And at the same time, like when it comes to the business part, like a lot of the institution or like business company, they do not think about like how, like they only think about the positive impact that they're getting, but they did not think about the negative impact it's going to be like affect like the generation nowadays. And like they didn't think about like what's going on and they're not ready to accept the consequences. And I think that's the pros and cons.
Okay, good. Yeah, thank you so much for that response. Wei Ni, your question also is the same. What are some pros and cons of social media?
I think the part is like we are more easy to learn or contact with the new thing. And like when I in the ESL class, like in CLC, and our professor like let us to use like Facebook to share our like experience and our lecture like in the Facebook and share with our classmates to communicate. So I think it is the really like good thing like to like connect us together, let us like know each other. And but I think that social media also like let us like more easy to encounter the problem of the cybercrime. Like on the Instagram, like they have many like advertising and they may sell the like illegal thing or something, and there is the problem like people don't know and they will like go to buy them, and yeah, and they will cause the problem. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Jace, pros and cons of social media?
Yes. I think that a huge pro that I think like the folks before me have mentioned is the access that we have to each other and the connections that we can make through that access. I was really thinking about what had been said previously about the world kind of becoming a transnational experience, and I started like when I was ruminating on that, I thought about the fact that like my mother-in-law hasn't seen her parents, her family, because they're separated by a wall, right? Because they're separated by a border, because you know that we have family that lives across a sea, that there's restrictions that you know are so man-made, but restrictions nonetheless. And it, you know, it's beautiful. She talks, my mother-in-law talks to her mom every day because they can video chat because they have that access. My grandmother, she lost all her pictures that she had of the 35 years that she had spent with my grandfather, and the only reason she still has access to them is because one of my cousins had digitized them and shared them with her. And it just, right, it's these little connections that we still can make are incredible, are very heartwarming, are emotional. But I think that a major con that I thought of was the fact that we consume social media. We see these narratives, right? We have these ideas of what folks live like, whether it be in our own country or in other countries and other areas of the world. And it's one narrative that social media oftentimes backs up. But we don't think about the fact that, like, even in the US, right, social media doesn't portray the poverty, the homelessness, the food insecurity of even youth of our age, right? And we don't see that. And when I think about, right, social media bringing awareness to food insecurity to homelessness. It's those videos on Facebook of people giving somebody money, giving them food, giving them, right? And it's like, great, you're right, like awesome, this person now has this thing that they needed to survive, but they've become the object of you carrying out this narrative of how awesome you are, of how kind you are. And it's like, no. And even like, even not even to that serious point, the lives that people live on social media often aren't the lives that they're living on their day to day, right? We live in this like very divided, very stratified society where, sure, like I could, you know, go out and buy some designer bag and be like, oh, look at my designer bag and this awesome life that I'm living. But that doesn't address the fact that I, you know, am not that person, that I don't live this extravagant, rich life, you know? I think, you know, I guess to summarize, it's just like had everybody had said, the con is social media must always be taken with a grain of salt.
Good, thank you so much. Yes, I can see applauses. Yeah, all right, so one more person, Yang Hua, I think I just saw your child on the Zoom. Oh, there she, okay, so yes, we can, yeah, everybody, I think everybody, almost everybody else is from the United States. So this is actually globalization right here on the Zoom. Okay, so Yang Hua, what do you think are pros and cons of social media? I'm sure you can write a dissertation on this, but briefly.
Actually, it's quite fun because I actually write one chapter on using WeChat. So I may have a lot to say, but over here I'll just share a little bit. So WeChat is one of the, I think, the main social media we use among Chinese migrants in Australia. So it's good as a connection to connect it with people, with family and friends in China, and also get the first-hand information about what's going on in China as well. Some of them may be not reported like publicly, but we can get more like inside information. The only problem is that sometimes it can cause a lot of, you know, like what just Jace mentioned, some, you know, not, how do I say, not as positive information, and you have to judge what kind of information you can trust, the source and also the channel. And it also provides, so WeChat is not just a social media, it also provides this kind of convenience. We can pay with this app in Australia as well, in a lot of Chinese concentrate suburbs. So it's quite great. Secondly, so this WeChat promote migrant entrepreneurship. So a lot of new migrants, when they come to Australia, before they are able to find a professional job, so they may take the time to do personal, to work as a trader, like a personal shopper for their friends and family in China, and they work this as a way of living, just charge for a small kind of commission. So we have terms like that called Weishang or Daigou. So it's quite trending, but you may heard from news, Chinese shoppers, they just whip out Australian baby formulas from the shops and things like that. So this is kind of contradictory information over there. But for the newly migrants, it's a way for them to set the ground in Australia to gain some kind of financial security before they can find a professional job as a transition. Thirdly, I think is a good way for professional networking. So there are quite a lot of research done in America recently about middle class moms. They share resources about schooling for the kids, and over here in Australia, so they share like networking how do I say, they build this kind of professional community over here. They share resources and also job opportunities over here. So it's quite great to build professional capacity over there. And fourthly, I think it's a way quite powerful for WAMI to be able to, to present themselves in a way they wanted the world to see them. So some of us already mentioned over here, what do you say from social media? Maybe something not real, like different from reality, but it's kind of empowering self process as well. So I think there's an act of agency over there. But at the same time, there's a concern of privacy, in terms of personal information. Once it's out there, it's out there. You cannot undo it. The last point I want to say is social media is a time drain as well. So how to balance work, study, family life is kind of quite struggling if, social media is something can be quite addictive. Once you are there, you may spend hours on doing that. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so I have one more question, but what I'm thinking about is, since it's a little past 3 o'clock, maybe I'll just ask each of you to say maybe 1 or 2 words about the next question, and then or we can just go straight into a discussion. But the last question was going to be, what do you feel is very unique to American youth culture? And again, this is something that we can probably spend hours discussing, especially if you're from foreign country like I was, and I saw so many things so uniquely American, which my American friends didn't even notice, right? So maybe you can talk briefly about it. I don't know should I ask everybody? Yeah, maybe I should. Okay, so very quickly, maybe a few words. What do you think is very unique to American youth culture? Isabella?
I think the unwilling acceptance of a very high student debt.
Oh, ouch. Okay, great. How about you, Kevin?
I think a lot of American youth are independent, and in China, young people always follow the parents' plans and find some jobs like that.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Let's see. This is number 5. Okay. Susan Lin.
I think the unique trait that American youth culture has is they're not afraid to speak up. They're not afraid to make decisions.
Okay. How about you, Wayne? Wayne?
I think they have they are more like confident of show themselves and not feel being different with other, and they have clear goal. When I before I come here, I was I don't know what I want, but I made a friend at here, and they all have the amazing goal and dream, and they told me I should explore my life by myself. So I think that is unique to the American youth culture.
Okay, good. Jace?
Unwavering belief in themselves, whether it's warranted or not.
Okay. All right. And okay, that's great. And Yinghua?
Confident, independent, and brave.
Yeah, so I guess the theme is independence, confidence, student debt. So there was also a phrase that in Asia we listen to our parents. Okay, All right. Well, so we can talk about anything we'd like. First, I'd like to see if anybody in the audience has any questions, either to a particular, panelist or to just anybody in general. You can, I think you can unmute yourself and speak up unless everybody wants to talk at the same time. So go ahead, and if you have any questions, go ahead and just unmute your mic and tell us what you think.
I would like to know that our students, how is the United States different or similar to expectations before you came to the United States, or in Inhua's case, how was Australia different or similar to the impression that you had before you came?
So anybody can speak up. Any panelists, you can go ahead and talk about that. Go ahead, Isabella.
So for me, I moved here when I was 17, and my biggest thought about what America meant was it was the land of opportunity. And honestly, that lived up to my expectations. I was able to be a part of a completely different industry that barely exists where I'm from for years. And I am now able to go to school and learn things in a way, in a specialty that is very particular to this country. So I think that that particular expectation of mine was absolutely warranted.
Anybody else?
I have a question,
Okay.
if I may.
Sure.
So besides the financial factors, this is a school-based question. Besides the financial differences, what are some similarities or differences that students have experienced in the classroom coming from, wherever it is that they are? So what are some differences that you see in the classroom setting?
So for that one, I want to share my experience in the classroom. So when I was, I think the big difference over here is that I was able to take my child, the child you just saw, so to my class, all my classes, workshops, lectures. So since she was 1 month old, she was there the whole journey with me. So the environment over here is so open and supportive. And they said, like, as a young mom, they would say that's something you can do, like as a way of accepting you, not just as a mom, but you can do other things as well. But I think if I'm doing a postgraduate degree in China, that won't be possible. My teacher would say, you either go back and decide it whether you want to be a student or you want to be a mom. So you cannot doing both at the same time. So that's a huge difference. And yeah, I think the expectation of, doing research degree in China and in Australia, that would be quite different in terms of the way of expectations in a research culture. In China, I think according to the conversations between me and my friends, they would be expected to grow up in a particular way, or in a particular direction, shaped by the supervisor's, perception, what kind of students you would look like, or what kind of scholar you are going to become. But over here, I have more freedom to decide what kind of, researcher or what kind of person I want to be for now and in the future. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so Nadia, I think a big difference between Japan, where I came from, and here is that in Japan, most professors are automatically respected just by their position. And here, I pretty much have to earn the respect of students, because otherwise, you're just not. And also, students really care about points and grades. Nothing like where I came from. Where when you get a bad grade, you just get a bad grade. You don't fight over points or a fraction of a point with your professor, but they do here. So anyway, any other questions or comments? Yeah, go ahead, Winnie.
I want to share a different, like, when I'm in Taiwan, I learning English, and here, because like in Taiwan, like I think the most different is the way to like teach the English. Like when I'm in Taiwan, like I'm so afraid about like speak English, and I will like worry about like I make a mistake or something, and so I really like don't like speak English in Taiwan. And but when I came here, like the COC, they provide the ESL class, and they provide like the thing they teach me like how to like learn English and just like normal, like just speaking, like just conversation with other, and they made me like grow a lot, and it all allow me to like overcome my fear of like speaking English, so I can sit here to share my experience. And like I really like glad like I'm here, and although I'm not like speak very well right now, but I think I make a lot improve like learning English in here. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. That was so good. I sounded worse than you did when I came to the United States. Trust me. I really, I mean, I studied, took English for years in Japan, but that didn't help me speak. So that's great. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Questions or answers or just comments about things we talked about?
I think another thing about the class learning is that like Professor Zabi just mentioned, that the difference between the relationship with supervisors or with lecturers. In China, I think we are more, we are told what to do or what to believe, or there's a kind of power relationship over there, and you are not, you can argue, but not in a public way or open way. But over here, like we can have open discussions, and we can talk about different opinions, and we don't have to agree with our supervisors on every level. Sorry.
That's perfectly okay. All right, I know our time, I want to be time sensitive here. It's 3:14. We had just a minute or so, but anybody else want to say anything before we close and go to the polls? Any last minute comment? It's been great. It's very productive. And I just personally, I've learned a lot about, different perspectives and things from international, issues and so on. But anyone else?
I'm just quickly say, if I can say, I'm sitting here in Sydney, Australia, and listening to this. It's interesting about the challenges are global. They cross, the challenges and discussions that a lot of the students here have discussed, and how talking from an Australian perspective. But it is really interesting to hear how much this is echoed in different parts of the world. So I want to really thank the panelists for their insights. It's been fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, if I may just add, so some of you know, my wife and I spent 2 years in Melbourne. I was a researcher at the University of Melbourne in Victoria, and my wife had 2 children. She had a third one while in Australia. But her mother friends would always say, "Hey, you want to go to the casino tomorrow? Let's go sing karaoke or something." And that was just not something that my wife, full-time housewife, was used to. And there was a big difference between the culture we were from and the Australian culture. And these mothers are still good friends with us, and they're just fun-loving people, I must say. And speaking of which, James will be our speaker tonight at 5 o'clock. And so I hope to see many of you back here again on Zoom. And so with that, I guess we should probably bring this to the conclusion. Maritza, do we have the polls? So if I could ask all of you to answer just a few questions. And let's see, I think the way it works is you answer 3 questions and submit. There should be a blue button at the bottom that says submit. And once you're done, I appreciate you being here and hope to see you again. We have several more sessions this week. And then the scholars, including all the speakers we've had today and yesterday and tonight and tomorrow, will be on the scholars panel discussion on Thursday. So thank you very much and hope to see you again. Take care.
Thank you, guys. Marisa, if you can stay on for a couple of minutes, that'd be great. And Tim, please. Thank you. Well, and stop and break if you guys want to